Jin We sat quietly in the pond, steam rising around him as he took a rare moment of solitude. His thoughts churned with the events of the day, a mixture of relief and unease weighing heavily on his heart. The encounter with his junior brother had been dangerously close to exposing the secret he had guarded his entire life, that he was, in truth, a woman. His master's teachings echoed in his mind, a stern reminder of the sacrifices required to survive in the ruthless martial world. To be taken seriously, to face fewer hardships, he had been forced to live as a man, a truth that had shaped every facet of his existence. Clenching his fists beneath the water's surface, Jin We couldn't ignore the lingering tension of the close call. Yet, his heart swelled with gratitude as he recalled the priceless elixir his junior brother had given him without a second thought. It had saved him from a crippling injury, a gesture of kindness so selfless it was almost unbelievable. His junior's unwavering support and lack of resentment over Jin We's perceived lack of martial talent struck a chord deep within him. As the memories played out in his mind, a faint flush crept across Jin We's cheeks. There was a new, unfamiliar warmth in his chest, one that confused him. The mere thought of his junior brought a strange flutter to his heart, a yearning he struggled to name. He imagined a future where he could stand by his junior's side, not just as a sect sibling but as someone even closer. The fleeting vision of becoming Lee Cheol-soo's wife flickered through his mind, bringing with it a mix of longing and alarm. Snapping himself back to reality, Jin We shook his head, a determined resolve hardening his features. He chastised himself for entertaining such foolish fantasies. His junior was like a sibling to him, nothing more. These emotions, he told himself, were simply the bonds of brotherly affection, nothing deeper. He couldn't allow them to grow into something more. With a firm resolve, Jin We reminded himself of his responsibilities. Rebuilding the sect, protecting it, and standing by his junior's side were his priorities. None of these could be achieved in the fragile body of a woman. To remain strong, to face the challenges ahead, he had to continue living as a man. He steeled himself, pushing the swirling thoughts of affection and longing to the farthest corners of his mind. There was no place for such distractions in the life he had chosen. Lee Cheol-soo waited patiently, though a flicker of annoyance crossed his features as time dragged on. Jin We had been gone for what felt like far too long, and Cheol-soo couldn't help but question the delay. Bathing, after all, was a simple task, a matter of minutes for a healthy man. Yet here he was, left to his thoughts in the eerie silence of the cave. His gaze wandered over the walls, their surfaces glimmering faintly under the soft light of embedded luminous pearls. The sheer expanse of the cavern caught his attention, its vastness a testament to the former grandeur of the Gongdong sect. Each carefully placed pearl spoke of the wealth and pride that had once defined this place. Yet, standing in the shadow of its faded splendor, Cheol-soo couldn't help but reflect on its fall from grace. The Gongdong sect, once the home of Mugukja, the greatest swordmaster under heaven, had crumbled into obscurity. The echoes of its glorious past lingered faintly in the ornate carvings and the treasures left behind, but they only served as a stark reminder of the sect's decline. According to the fragmented records Lee Cheol-soo had recalled from his previous life, the tragedy of the Gongdong sect was etched in history as a tale of sudden and brutal downfall. 50 years earlier, the sect had been nearly annihilated in a massacre, leaving behind only a single survivor, Lim Baexian, the wielder of the heavenly thunder sword. Lim's survival had been a twist of fate. At the time of the massacre, he had been confined to a meditation cell, punished for misconduct. Ironically, it was this confinement that spared his life, even though Lim himself was not regarded as highly skilled in martial arts. The loss of the sect's legacy was catastrophic. The fire that consumed their library destroyed most of their critical martial texts, erasing centuries of accumulated knowledge. With that, the rise of the Gongdong sect came to an abrupt and irreversible end. Lim Baexian, the lone bearer of what little remained, took on only one disciple before his death, Zhang Yang, the current head of the sect. Zhang Yang bore the title of the demon-slaying swordsman, but in this era, the name was more a burden than an honor. It was a mocking label, coined by the demon sect faction, Saiyang Hui, who constantly kept a predatory watch over the remnants of the Gongdong sect. The title was a cruel jab at the sect's loss of its once famed demon-slaying sword techniques, a bitter reminder of how far they had fallen. This was why the martial texts recently recovered were such a monumental discovery. They represented a fragment of the sect's forgotten glory, a glimmer of hope amidst decades of decline. For those who understood their value, these texts were more than relics. They were a chance to rebuild, to reclaim even a shadow of the greatness that had once defined the Gongdong sect. Lee Cheol-soo's thoughts swirling with a mix of awe and curiosity. It was clear that Mugukja, the legendary swordmaster of the Gongdong sect, had not created this place with foresight for the future. Yet, to the sect, it was nothing short of a heaven-sent blessing. The stories claimed that Mugukja had erased all records of the Gwangsyeong blood cave to ensure its secrecy, a decision that had evidently kept it hidden even from the prying eyes of the demon sect. Still, something about the situation felt odd to Cheol-soo. Why would a figure as revered as Mugukja take such extreme measures to hide a sacred site? It wasn't merely a question of secrecy. Any member of the Gongdong sect from that era could have navigated to this place effortlessly. The notion that Mugukja foresaw the sect's eventual decline and planned for it seemed absurd. Yet, one fact was undeniable. The cave's existence had been wiped from history entirely, an act carried out by Mugukja's will alone. As Cheol-soo examined his surroundings, his thoughts turned to the discrepancies between his previous life and the present. Decades earlier, after obtaining the elixir, he had returned to this very cave for secluded training, only to find its entrance collapsed and the site rendered inaccessible. But now, the Gwangsyeong blood cave stood in pristine condition, every structure intact. To him, it was as if Jin We embodied some otherworldly charm, a walking demon spawn sent to test his patience. As Lee Cheol-soo stepped out of the pond, the cool water still clinging to his skin, his eyes landed on Jin We. His senior brother was seated nearby, meticulously organizing the martial texts they had recovered from the depths of the Gwangsyeong blood cave. Cheol-soo's mind drifted as he observed Jin We's careful handling of the texts. The significance of their discovery began to take root in his thoughts. Once they returned to the main sect, the Gongdong sect would undoubtedly regain a portion of its lost martial heritage. For years, the sect had relied solely on the hard yang qi technique and the method of greater yang, both foundational yet limited in their scope. However, with the addition of the foundational in true technique, the sect now possessed a complete set of internal qi techniques. This newfound knowledge was no small achievement. With the method of greater yang and the 3 in true technique fully mastered, practitioners could advance into the advanced realm of the unified primordial qi technique. That technique, however, remained elusive. It was not among the texts they had recovered. Cheol-soo mused that the totality of Gongdong sect's martial arts should consist of 8 texts, including the long-lost demon-slaying sword technique. Yet, for now, these discoveries were enough to reignite hope for the sect's revival. As Lee Cheol-soo carefully examined the recovered manuals, a wave of disappointment washed over him. His fingers grazed the edges of the ancient scrolls, yet the absence of the 8th, arguably the most vital, loomed over him like a shadow. The demon-slaying sword technique, a legacy of the Gongdong sect's golden era, was nowhere to be found. Jin We, seated beside the scattered manuals, confirmed what Cheol-soo had already begun to fear. Despite their exhaustive search through the depths of the Gwanxiang blood cave, the scroll containing the legendary sword technique had eluded them. Lee Cheol-soo's chest tightened as Jin We confirmed the absence of the demon-slaying sword technique. His mind raced, struggling to reconcile this with the knowledge he had carried over from his previous life. There was no doubt in his memory. His senior brother had found the technique within this very cave. The information passed down from the Eastern faction had been clear and precise, leaving no room for doubt. Yet now, the reality before him was starkly different. The answer began to take shape in his thoughts, albeit an unsettling one. It wasn't that the information was wrong. Rather, the technique itself had never existed as a written text. Swordmaster Mugukja, a figure who had transcended the boundaries of life and death, would not have been confined to conventional means of passing down his knowledge. For a master of such unparalleled skill, there were countless ways to impart martial arts beyond the pages of a scroll. The absence of the technique as a tangible artifact didn't mean it was truly lost. Mugukja might have embedded his swordsmanship in some other form, an ethereal imprint, a hidden trial, or perhaps within the very essence of this sacred place. Such methods were not unheard of among the great masters of martial history. Jin We's voice broke through the quiet of the cave. "Oh right, I found some sword marks beyond the bath." He rose to his feet, his expression alight with newfound urgency. "Let me show you." Cheol-soo followed closely behind, his brow furrowed in confusion. Sword marks? His thoughts were skeptical. Couldn't they simply be random scratches carved by time or nature? The idea of something more deliberate, something purposeful, felt distant and far-fetched. Jin We, however, walked with a growing sense of certainty, his excitement unmistakable. "You'll understand when you see them, Junior," he said, his tone filled with both confidence and mystery, "because those marks are eerily beautiful." Before long, they arrived before a jagged wall, where several deep slashes marred the rock surface. The marks were clearly made by a blade, precise and deliberate.